Hello and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host, Chris Branch. This is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one subject. And today we're going to focus on one of our favorite series of episodes, and that is marketing examples. You know, what we tend to do ever so often, we like to talk about something that a brand or an organization has done in the world of Gen AI, whether they've got results or not. Either it's to let people know this is what they're doing, so keep an eye, or we also, if they've got results, we like to tell you kind of like what's happened and the impact. So what we're going to talk about today is something that we've seen. It's been going around, well, I want to say going around in this small little bubble of creators. And that is to do with an advert with the boxer, Anthony Joshua, and one of his sponsors, Under Armour. Now, we're going to talk about what they've done and how they used AI in this commercial. And again, if you've seen the commercial, it's a very good commercial, but they're basically claiming it as the first AI-powered sports commercial. And that's one side of the story. But what's happened is that there is another side. So one is kind of like a good side. This is really good. This is the first and the advert looks great. But there's a second side to it. But before we get on to the second side, which is the controversial side, Chris, you've seen the advert. What's your thoughts of this just generally, like AI in advertising? Was it inevitable?
Yeah, so the way it came onto my radar, yes, it's definitely inevitable. You know, advertising and AI are going to intertwine a lot. But the way it came onto both of our radars in this case was it was controversy first, right? Like we understood from certain articles that had been written that there's been a big stink about this particular AI project and because of deadlines and not getting copyright and all of these other things. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, it is inevitable that this will happen more and more and more in the advertising space. And in this specific case, it seemed an unfortunate series of events that's to be learned from, essentially. But we both found it through negative feedback rather than just discovering it in our feed. It was, here's what the comments were written, and then you go and discover the content with the comments underneath it. So it was kind of like,
it's almost like that controversy sold and created.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because the advert itself was, again, it's a short ad advertising kind of AJ, Under Armour, again, that typical sports ad kind of demonstrating how great he is because of Under Armour. And it was a mixture of, you had like kind of 3D graphics, you had AI powered, you had real life footage, and it was kind of like all put together, curated together into one advert. Now, here's where it gets controversial, because the director of the ad, a guy called Wes Walker, he faced criticism for allegedly reusing other people's work without giving credit in the ad. And this started leading to debate on the use of AI in creative industries. Because it was a mixture of, yes, the real footage, but I believe there was some form of using AI in some way. I don't know whether or not it was taking the real footage and putting some AI like parts on it. So whether they kind of used it to learn and then created certain things, or was it the way it was researched? I don't know. They haven't got into the detail exactly. But essentially, one of the key things is that they didn't give credit to the real people who made the advert, which was, not the real people who made the advert, the real people who had the original footage, which was creatives. One was called Gustav Johansson and another was called Andrei Shemitov. So hopefully you haven't butchered your name, but I'm giving you credit in this episode. We're giving you credit here. So so essentially what they noticed the advert, they saw it, they noticed the footage, and then they started leaving comments on the back of Wes Walker's Instagram account, who was obviously promoting it, pointing out that their work was repackaged without proper credit in the ad.
And again, it was down to an unfortunate series of events, because it sounds like from the articles that we read, that Under Armour were putting pressure on Wes in order to deliver this by a certain time. AJ also wasn't available to film because he was, leading up to a big fight with Ngannou. So it was, a silly mistake to decide to take footage without giving consent and just doing it in order to deliver it by the project date. And that's the lesson to be learned here, really, is that no matter how tight the deadline, you just can't go on crediting people's work and not expect backlash online by people who are like you know, like other creatives that are getting their work ripped off with no credit.
Yeah.
So it was a very unfortunate series to be learned from. And rushing a deadline and a brand and a big influencer, it's hard, you know, you're not going to get that timing right, and you just have to wait.
Yeah, and I think it's going to lead to if you look at the bigger picture, and it's going to lead to the exploitation of creatives and the importance of giving appropriate credit, and also unethical practices. It's going to be a kind of like an amalgamation of these three things. You know, yes, we don't want to exploit the creatives. They've spent years and years kind of building themselves up, coming up with creative ideas. Obviously, it's not nice, regardless if you're seen as a creative or not, where someone steals your idea. So that's obviously one thing. Then there's the whole giving credit to something. You know, if you're going to use someone's work, at least credit them, you know, even if you haven't got permission, at least give them the courtesy of saying, I got it from this person, which we see a lot of that on one of our platforms that we use, which is LinkedIn. You know, we see a lot of people just take other people's work and kind of, and this is worse, put their like signature on it as if it was them who created it. But then also, and this is the big thing, it's the ethical, unethical practices. And that's where you're going to start seeing, I believe, a lot more of unethical. You're going to see a lot of ethical people when it comes to the use of AI, but I think you're going to see a lot of unethical people. And some of it, I believe, won't necessarily be done on purpose. And what I mean by that is, how do we know it's you? How do we know that you're the one who created this if the AI might get different like learning points from different things, and part of it is you? So that's where I can see it being really great area.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's almost impossible in a large training data set. Even it seems that the OpenAI technical director doesn't want to admit where all the sources come from, you know? So we've understood this very much from AI's conception, that these are trained on billions of parameters, and therefore no attribution will be possible in order to know where originally this was trained on. But in this case, it's a direct use of copyrighted material, it sounds like. So that's very much different than it going through a large language model and then somehow ending up on the other side of it. But yeah, there's all sorts to be talked about here in the future, right? Like, how do we attribute? What sort of royalties do we give? How do we give credits? And what is the mandatory way to do this? Like, should they be compensated each time that their content's reused? If so, is it kind of like Netflix rerunning Friends, you know, and buying the rights to it, and then having that, you know, be the big thing on their platform is, and now it's on HBO, you know, like wherever they'll buy the rights to this thing. Like, it's interesting time for media.
Yeah, I think it goes down to, and this is something that happened recently, and that was the CTO of OpenAI. And they asked her, what's Sora? Like, how is it trained? Is it trained on YouTube videos? Is it like how is it trained? Like, how does it get so good? And she was essentially saying, I don't know. You know, I'm sure she does, but I know that she came out saying, I don't know. So that there is going to be another potential problem.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, the situation really is going to highlight the growing tension between traditional creatives and also the increasing pressure for AI in commercial purposes and productions.
So true.